Another issue in the news today is the fact the United Nations climate chief has told us that there are only 2 years in which we could save the planet. Now, I want to find out what that actually means because I have plans for the next 2 years. So if the planet's going to cease to exist, I better start spending all my money now, not that I've got any, and enjoying myself. But joining me now to discuss this is a man who really will know when the planet is about to be destroyed, Ed Gemmell, because he's leader of the Climate Party. Now, I probably haven't done a fair service there to this UN climate chief. I don't think he said that the Earth will cease as we understand it, but he has talked about 2 crucial years ahead of us. What does he mean, Ed?
We've got to get the emissions coming down, and the United Nations has set emissions targets. In 2018, they set the target that we had to reduce emissions by 45% globally from our 2010 emissions levels, and they've been going up ever since. So we've been increasing emissions ever since. We've hardly had a blip, although COVID did give a slight blip in that. So it's been an ever increasing, and yet we still have this same target of 45%. What he's saying, I don't agree with him. I think it's even faster than he's saying. Is we have 2 years to curb those emissions and start bringing them down in order to reach the 45% in 2030. But if we've been increasing in the emissions for the last, 6 years, then clearly, actually, we need to do even more now, don't we, to get it out of the atmosphere? So if the scientists were right in 2018, we've got to do more. Now,
what happens if we don't do it?
If we don't do it, it starts to slip away from us, if it hasn't already. And I mean, I think we should look at some of the most recent things that have just happened. Only a couple of weeks ago, we got a report that in Antarctica, they had an average temperature they had an overall increase above the average temperature of 38.5 degrees Celsius. That's 38.5 above the day's average, and in a couple of places, 50. Now, just imagine if we got that even for a day here, and it went 38.5 to 50 degrees above. If we were looking at suddenly 50, 60, 70 degrees warming, just for a blip, because these blips might happen, and one's just happened in Antarctica, we'd all be dying. So in terms of the urgency, we need to move very hard and very fast on it now and get a grip of the idea it's going out of control, and the thing in Antarctica is showing it. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. What it's also saying, and I think this is where British innovation and British bravery can come into it, is somebody's got to lead. If we're going to get there by 2030.
So who do you trust? If you look at our current crop of politicians, of course, the Climate Party may sweep to power and you become our next Prime Minister. But if that doesn't come to pass, who would you trust, Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer, to take the climate more seriously?
Oh, my goodness. You set the bar so low, Jake. It's very, very difficult to come out with a real comment on that, I'm afraid. I'm afraid...
Well, you say we need leadership. So what does that... OK, if you can't pick an individual, what does leadership really look like for Britain?
Right. What leadership for Britain means is getting a real industrial mission. We have got to recognise that not only are we being told we need to do it scientifically, but in actual fact, what's happening economically. We now have 92% of world GDP already on the track towards net zero. Under commitments, I understand some are strong and some are not, some are early, some are late, but that is the direction of travel. We have to get this country out of the doldrums, grow our manufacturing product and grow our industry. And if we're going to do that, we're going to invest, what are we going to invest in? We've got to invest in tomorrow's industries, in the opportunity that's coming down the track. And right now, as I'm sure you're aware at the moment, because we have for almost 25 years now run a trade deficit, so we've been losing money every month. We've been exporting less than importing more than we export. So we're losing money. We're now paying on average over the last 2 years, £8 billion a month on the interest on our debt. So often we're running stories on £1 billion or £5 billion and tinkering around the edges. It's irrelevant. We need to get a proper industrial strategy, get real leadership, invest very, very heavily. And the 28 billion we talked about a few months ago is utterly irrelevant. It's got to be bigger, faster and bolder so that Britain wins.
Well, we'll see. It was a bit controversial for the Labour Party because they were asked how they were going to pay for it. It was the equivalent, I think, from memory, of a 2p interest increase in the basic rate of tax. So you can't do it cheaply. Look, Ed, you are a leader of a political party. The other thing we're talking about today is the maintenance of the nuclear deterrent. There's a couple of questions for you in that role as leader.
Yep.
I mean, would you maintain the nuclear deterrent? And if we were subject to an attack, would you pull the trigger?
I'm ex-army, so I was in the Queen's Regiment originally, and I was out in the jungles in Belize, and I absolutely believe in our military, and I believe we've got to have a strong military, and I believe in the nuclear deterrent. That is not a party policy, because as an individual, we're a single-issue party. We are focused on the climate opportunity. In relation to that, that's my own personal view on it. I think there is an additional view on it as well, as you just heard Keir Starmer talking about 2.5% spending on the army and defence. We don't have the money. So it comes back to what I said before. We have got to grow the economy, get a proper national mission going, and actually see money coming into the coffers so we can do these things and reduce NHS waiting lists and do everything else we need to do.
But the thing about 2.5% commitment is it's a percentage of the economy. So if you grow the economy, the commitment grows. It doesn't mean that all the other pressures on money disappear, does it?
Absolutely not. But if you stay with a stagnant economy where we are at the moment with growth of 0.1%, then you're taking 2.5 of that. So you've got to create an industrial mission to grow the economy in order to have money available. If not, that extra 0.5% he's talking about has got to be stolen from the NHS or from the police or from social services or from local government. We have to grow the pie in order to get there. And we have this opportunity because the whole world's going there.
Yeah, well, we've got to grip it. I mean, what people would say, I guess, is that for all the improvements we make in the UK that we've seen, particularly over the last 15 years, we've made great steps forward. Of course, all of that is negated by just a couple of months of the industrialisation of China.
You're absolutely right. But this also overlaps with the fact, of course, that we import everything from China. So China's industrialisation is actually taking emissions away from us. They're making doing the manufacturing and having the emissions, and we're not, which means you also don't have the jobs and the money.
Isn't that a bit of it? Isn't that a bit of the con of it, though? So you say to people, look, putting a heat pump in your home, something people may or may not want to do. It's certainly something the government wants you to do. It's manufactured in China, so all we're doing is offshoring the emissions, aren't we?
Well, I think the con is the con on British people. If we think that taking cheap imports from China tomorrow is actually going to solve our economy because we don't have to borrow so much to do it, what we need to do is massively invest in our economy, make the next generation of heat pumps here or the innovation that eclipses heat pumps and have it British made. I mean, there's a ridiculous situation. We have a fantastic innovation going on in Oxford with Oxford PV, and I've only read about it on the internet and looked into it. I'm not connected to it. But they're doing the innovation in Oxford and they're manufacturing it in Germany.
Yeah. Well, the thing is we need the innovation in heat pumps because they're just not very good.